Your mind is loud, your thoughts won't stop, and you keep asking where God is. But what if he's not in the noise? What if he's waiting for the silence? There is a kind of noise that no one else hears, but it never stops inside you. Thoughts colliding, fears repeating, questions echoing, prayers that feel like they bounce off the ceiling and return unanswered. You open the Bible, but your mind is loud. You try to worship, but something inside you won't quiet down. And in the middle of that internal storm, you wonder, how can I possibly hear God like this? In 1st Book of Kings 19:11-13, the prophet Elijah was not in a place of strength. He had just experienced victory, and then collapse, public triumph, followed by private despair. He was exhausted, afraid, mentally overwhelmed. He ran into isolation, carrying a mind that would not rest. If anyone understood internal noise, it was him. Then came the wind, violent, dramatic, then the earthquake, shaking everything, then the fire, intense and consuming. And the scripture says something striking. The Lord was not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire. And after all that intensity came a still small voice, not louder, softer. God did not compete with the chaos. He waited until the noise passed. And maybe that is the part we misunderstand. We keep looking for God in the spectacular, in the overwhelming, in the emotionally explosive moments. But what if his voice is not fighting for volume, but inviting us into silence? Mental silence is not the absence of thoughts. It is the surrender of control. It is the moment you stop wrestling every fear and simply sit, exposed, listening. And maybe God has been speaking all along, but the storm inside you has been too loud to notice. Elijah was not just tired, he was mentally shattered. After standing boldly before prophets and kings, after calling down fire from heaven, he collapsed under the weight of fear and disappointment. One threat was enough to unravel his strength. Isn't that painfully familiar? How one thought, one memory, one fear can undo an entire season of faith. He ran into the wilderness, carrying more than physical exhaustion. He carried internal noise. I am alone. I have failed. This is the end. Those were not external voices. They were thoughts. And thoughts, when repeated long enough, begin to sound like truth. When God told him to stand on the mountain, the wind tore through the rocks. Dramatic, overwhelming. Then the ground shook violently. Then fire blazed. Spectacle, power, intensity. But Scripture whispers something that changes everything. The Lord was not in them, and after the chaos, a gentle whisper. Not a shout, not an argument, not a rebuke, a whisper. Why? Because God was not trying to overpower Elijah's mind. He was trying to heal it. The wind could shatter stone, but it could not mend a fragile soul. The earthquake could move mountains, but it could not quiet anxious thoughts. The fire could consume sacrifice, but it could not restore emotional stability. The whisper required something Elijah had not practiced in his panic: stillness. And this is where many believers struggle. We beg God to silence the storm, but he invites us into quiet trust instead. We ask him to remove every intrusive thought instantly, but sometimes he teaches us to let them pass without fear, while we lean closer to his voice. Mental silence is not forcing your brain to stop thinking. It is choosing which voice you will lean toward. And his voice is rarely the loudest, but it is always the safest. There is something deeply humbling about the whisper, because it exposes how addicted we are to noise. Noise feels productive, dramatic, urgent. Silence feels vulnerable. In silence, you cannot hide behind activity. You cannot drown your fears with distraction. You are left alone with your thoughts, and that can be terrifying. Elijah covered his face when he heard the whisper. Not when the wind tore the mountain apart, not when the earthquake shook the ground, not when the fire blazed. He covered his face at the sound of gentleness. Why? Because the whisper was not spectacle. It was presence. Sometimes what overwhelms us is not God's power, but His nearness. When your mind is loud, when intrusive thoughts contradict your faith, when guilt whispers accusations, you may assume God has grown distant. But what if the opposite is true? What if the noise is not proof of His absence, but the very reason He draws closer? Softly, patiently, without force. The whisper does not compete. It invites. It does not shame. It reassures. It does not rush. It waits. And this is where healing begins. Not in dramatic emotional explosions, but in small surrendered moments. In choosing to sit quietly for a few minutes, even when your thoughts race. In breathing slowly and repeating truth, even when feelings resist. In allowing God to speak identity over you, instead of letting fear define you. The whisper may sound like this: you are not abandoned. Or, this thought is not your master. Or simply, I am here. And sometimes that is enough. Because when the mind learns to lean toward the whisper, the storm slowly loses authority. Here is what we rarely admit. Sometimes we are afraid of silence, because we think God will confront us harshly there. We expect rebuke. We brace for disappointment. We prepare ourselves to hear everything we did wrong. So we stay busy, distracted, spiritually active, but internally distant. But when Elijah stepped into that silence, the whisper did not crush him. It did not say, "Why are you so weak?" It did not mock his fear. It asked a question. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Not because God lacked information, but because Elijah needed to process what was happening inside him. God's whisper creates space, not pressure. When your mind is crowded with guilt, intrusive thoughts, self-accusation, you may assume that silence will amplify condemnation. But often, silence reveals something else entirely. It reveals that many of the harsh voices were never God to begin with. The enemy shouts, anxiety shouts, shame shouts, perfectionism shouts. God whispers, and the whisper carries authority without aggression. It carries correction without humiliation. It carries direction without chaos. Mental silence is not empty space. It is sacred space. It is where false narratives begin to lose credibility. It is where your nervous system slowly realizes it is safe. It is where you discover that God is not pacing impatiently. He is sitting with you. The whisper does not demand that you fix your mind instantly. It invites you to trust Him while your mind is still healing. And when you learn to recognize that tone, gentle, steady, grounded in truth, something shifts. The noise may not disappear overnight, but it no longer defines reality. Because the loudest voice is not always the truest one. And this is the turning point. The whisper was not just comfort, it was direction. After the silence, after the question, after Elijah poured out his fear again, God gave him clarity, practical steps, a renewed assignment. Purpose did not come in the wind. It came after the whisper. This matters deeply, especially this morning, because many believers wake up already tired, not physically, but mentally, before the coffee, before the messages, before the responsibilities. The thoughts are already moving. Yesterday's guilt, lingering anxiety, that subtle fear that today will feel the same. But in 1 Book of Kings 19, God met Elijah not to scold him, but to steady him, not to overwhelm him, but to anchor him. The whisper did not arrive at the end of his usefulness. It arrived at the beginning of restoration, and maybe this morning, before the noise of the day gains volume, you are being invited into something different. Not to fight every thought, not to analyze every feeling, not to achieve instant mental perfection, but to pause, to breathe slowly, to sit in stillness for a few sacred moments, and to lean toward the gentle voice that does not rush you. The whisper still carries direction, it still carries identity, it still carries calm authority, and it sounds like this. You are not behind. You are not abandoned. You are still called. Morning mercy is real. Fresh strength is real. Divine nearness is not reserved for stable minds. It is especially present for fragile ones. So today, you do not begin with noise. You begin with presence. And when the day unfolds, when thoughts attempt to rise, when pressure tries to build, you will remember that before anything else. You heard him, not in thunder, not in fire, but in the quiet, steady assurance. I am with you. Let's pray. God, my mind feels loud, crowded, restless. Thoughts overlap, worries compete, memories interrupt my prayers. I come to you tired of the noise inside me. I search for you in strong emotions, in sudden answers, in powerful signs, but my soul remains unsettled, just like the prophet who waited on the mountain. I expect you in the wind, in the earthquake, in the fire, yet you are not there. You come in a whisper, gentle, quiet, easily missed. Teach me to slow down, to stop demanding noise as proof of your presence. Help me understand that silence is not absence, that quiet does not mean you've gone. Calm the storm inside me, not by force, but by your nearness. I want to hear you again, not through pressure, but through peace. Tune my heart to recognize your still voice, even when my thoughts resist rest. I remain here, not rushing, not striving, waiting, believing that you speak softly and that silence can be holy ground. Lord, I confess how impatient my listening has become. I want answers quickly, clarity immediately, peace on demand. My mind keeps scanning for signs, trying to control the moment when you speak. But you invite me to wait, to breathe, to release the need to understand everything at once. Teach me that mental silence is not emptiness. It is surrender. It is laying down my urgency, my inner arguments, my constant analysis. I quiet my thoughts before you now, not perfectly, but honestly. When distractions rise, I don't fight them alone. I bring them to you, one by one. I let them pass. I stay. I learn to remain present, trusting that you are closer than my thoughts. Help me stop chasing your voice and start receiving it. You are not hiding from me. You are teaching me how to listen, beyond noise, beyond pressure, beyond fear. I choose stillness, not as an escape, but as an act of faith, believing that in quietness, you are already speaking. Father, I begin to notice how loud my inner voice has been, always explaining, defending, replaying, predicting. It speaks even when I want to hear you. I confess that sometimes I confuse my thoughts with your direction, and my anxiety with urgency. Teach me the difference. Teach me how to pause before reacting, how to let my soul settle before I speak. I don't want to fill every silence with noise. I want to honor it, to trust that you work in quiet spaces, just as you met your servant after the wind passed, after the shaking stopped, after the fire faded. Meet me after my thoughts slow down. Strip away the pressure to perform spiritually, to feel something dramatic, to prove that you are near. Let me rest in simple awareness, breathing, listening, waiting. If your voice comes as a whisper, Make my heart humble enough to hear it, attentive enough to recognize it, patient enough to stay still. I surrender my need for control and remain here, learning that stillness is not empty, it is full of you, God. The silence still feels uncomfortable. My mind searches for something to hold on to, a thought, a plan, a reassurance. I notice how quickly I want to escape stillness, how I reach for noise to avoid vulnerability. But you meet me here, not demanding words, not pushing, simply present. Teach me to stay, even when silence exposes my restlessness, even when nothing seems to be happening. Help me trust that you are at work beneath the surface, shaping me, calming me, aligning me. I don't need to force your voice. I don't need to create spiritual noise. I need to be available, attentive, open. Let this quiet become a place of safety, not fear. Let my breathing slow, my body relax, my thoughts soften. I offer you this space, uncluttered, unhurried. If you choose to speak, I will listen. If you choose to remain silent, I will trust. Because your presence is enough, even without words. I remain on this holy ground, learning that you often speak most clearly when I finally stop striving. Lord, as the noise settles, I begin to hear my own heart more clearly, the fears beneath the thoughts, the weariness beneath the questions. I realize how much I needed this quiet, not to escape life, but to face it with you. Teach me to listen without rushing to conclusions, to sit with you without demanding outcomes. Let your peace guard my inner world, not by removing every thought, but by ordering them gently. When my mind wanders, guide it back without frustration. When anxiety returns, cover it with your calm. I want to recognize your whisper, not only in prayer, but in daily moments, in pauses, in simple awareness. Train my soul to notice you in the ordinary, in the soft movements of grace. I don't want to miss you because I'm waiting for something louder. Sharpen my sensitivity, deepen my attentiveness. Let this silence shape my hearing, so when you speak, even quietly, my heart responds with trust. I remain here, learning that listening is love, and stillness is obedience. Father, I notice how silence begins to heal places words never reached. My breathing steadies, my shoulders loosen, my thoughts no longer rush ahead of my heart. I didn't know how tense I was until you invited me to rest. Teach me to return to this quiet often, not only when I'm overwhelmed, but as a way of staying near. When life grows loud again, remind me that I can pause, that I can step aside, that I can listen before reacting. Let your whisper become familiar, so I don't need chaos to feel you close. Help me trust that guidance often comes gently, not urgently, not harshly. I release the pressure to hear you perfectly. I release the fear of missing you. You are patient. You repeat yourself when needed. You wait for my heart to slow down. I place my thoughts in your hands, not suppressing them, but surrendering them. I stay here, attentive, open, calm, learning that your voice brings clarity, not confusion, and that peace is often the first sign that you are speaking. Lord, in this stillness I begin to recognize your tone, not sharp, not rushed, not accusing. Your voice carries peace, even when it brings truth. I see now how noise distorted my listening, how fear made everything sound urgent. Teach me to discern your whisper from my worries, your guidance from my impulses. Let my heart learn your rhythm, slow, steady, faithful. When decisions wait ahead of me, help me return to quiet first, before opinions, before reactions, before conclusions. I don't want to move faster than your peace. I don't want to speak louder than your leading. Shape my inner world so it reflects your calm. Let silence become a doorway, not an obstacle, where trust deepens, where clarity grows. I remain attentive, not straining, not forcing, simply available, believing that you still speak today and that a quiet heart can hear you clearly, even in a noisy world. God. I notice how this quiet follows me now, even when I return to noise, even when the day speeds up again. Something inside me remembers stillness, remembers that I don't have to react to every thought, answer every worry, prove every feeling. You are teaching me restraint, holy patience, a slower inner pace. When pressure rises, remind me to pause, to breathe, to listen inwardly before responding outwardly. Let silence become a refuge, not a retreat, a place where wisdom forms, where emotions settle, where your whisper keeps guiding me. I don't want to live driven by urgency anymore. I want to live led by peace. Train my heart to check in with you throughout the day, in small moments, between tasks, in quiet breaths. May your gentle voice guide my steps more than my racing mind. I carry this stillness with me now, trusting that you continue to speak, softly, faithfully, even when life grows loud again. Father, I begin to trust silence as a companion, not an enemy. I no longer rush to fill it with explanations, or fear that something is wrong when words stop. In the quiet, I feel you steadying me, aligning my thoughts, softening my reactions. I see how often I spoke from noise, decided from pressure, prayed from anxiety. Teach me to let silence mature my responses, so my words carry wisdom, not haste. Let your peace become my filter, so I recognize when something is from you, and when it is only my restlessness speaking. When confusion appears, remind me to return here, to stillness, to listening. I don't need all answers at once. I need closeness. I need clarity born from calm. Shape my inner life so it reflects your order, not my chaos. I remain available, open, grounded, trusting that your whisper continues to guide me, step by step, decision by decision, breath by breath. Even when nothing dramatic happens, you are still speaking, and I am learning to hear. May the Lord's grace and peace accompany you today. Thank you for joining us in this moment of prayer.